Disney's new DuckTales series shines by making a lot of its stories about character growth and family relationships. But maintaining relationships, that can be pretty complicated stuff. You have to know people, you have to have a big picture mindset of the world, and you have to be ready to handle the unexpected. You might even say that life is kind of like an evil scheme. It's complicated, messy, and if even one thing goes wrong, everything could fall apart. In other words, you need to be able to see all the angles.
Come on! I give you Louie's 11!
Oh, okay, maybe a scheme isn't the right analogy for a healthy relationship, but it is a starting point. So let's talk about communication, friendship, relationships, people, music, popularity parties, and heist movies. This is Louie's 11. The idea of heist films are so deeply integrated into our pulp culture, it's almost expected that a show like DuckTales would parody it at some point. And considering that a heist is little more than a fancy word for scheme, there's nobody better to engineer that than Louie Duck. But where most heist stories are focused on pulling off some ridiculous feat, or stealing something from a vault, this heist works in reverse. Louie's 11 isn't about taking something out of a high security location, it's about getting something in. The three Caballeros. In short, here's the scheme. Sneak Donald, Panchito, and Jose's band, the three Caballeros, into the biggest party of the year and get them on stage, giving them a veritable shortcut to superstardom.
I get you into that party.
We get on the it list before it's posted online.
Louie has built an elaborate plan that supposedly covers every angle to get his uncle's band into the party. And I have to say, this heist format for this episode, it's really well done. It jumps through all the heist planning in a quick, tensely narrated montage, going over the plan in practically real time, kind of as it's happening.
And lastly, we need to figure out the party layout inside the museum, which we are doing now.
It's fun, and it gives you the idea that this plan is solid, that this is going to work.
This is Louie's 11. As long as there are no surprises, we'll be fine.
Of course, there are surprises. Falcon Graves is the bouncer at this event, and Louie's plan didn't account for multiple other factors, like another heist that might be going on at the same time. And there's a lot of fun stuff in this episode, but I'm going to skip over a lot of that, because the real trouble in the way of their heist is a character that most Disney fans already know. Daisy Duck.
Let's go, everyone! We want to start fashionably late, not late. Who is that?
Ugh, Daisy Duck.
In this story, Daisy is the personal assistant to Emma Glamour, the woman in charge of this party and whose It List blog kind of decides what's going to be popular in Duckburg the next year. And a big part of the scheme is getting past Daisy and Daisy's hyper-organized schedule for the party. And most importantly, getting her stage pass so the three Caballeros can actually perform for Miss Glamour and get on the It List. That particular job, getting the stage pass, falls on Donald, and kicks off DuckTales' version of the story of how Daisy and Donald first meet. That's a story that I'm not sure has been told before, or at least it's not all that commonly known. Like with Mickey and Minnie, Donald and Daisy's relationship is usually just sort of assumed, a constant. But in the world of DuckTales, Donald's kind of been too busy raising Huey, Dewey, and Louie to really worry about getting a girlfriend. Now we're seeing that story unfold. The setup is pretty simple. Donald needs to follow Daisy into an elevator and steal her stage pass. But things get more complicated from there. Before we get to that though, I'm a little hung up on something else. The reason they need the stage pass. Donald's band. You see, this episode has me wondering about the makeup of the three Caballeros as a band. In the original Three Caballeros movie, the song is mostly sung by Panchito about his friendship with Jose and Donald. There are a few harmonies and interjections by the other two, but it's mostly a story song. The group isn't really a band. In pretty much all their appearances since that original movie though, they definitely kind of fell into the role of a band, taking up that persona in things like the House of Mouse or Don Rosa's Donald Duck comics and the Disney parks, and of course, DuckTales. But weirdly, that newer Three Caballeros TV series, they're more of a group of adventurers and not a band at all. When they are a band though, their roles in that band seem to fluctuate a lot. In some versions, like in The House of Mouse, they're all singers and dancers, effectively playing none of the instruments live. The Three Caballeros' first appearance in DuckTales is really similar to that original movie, with Panchito being the main singing role, and Donald and Jose kind of just pitching in with vocals every now and then. Donald is only featured as a solo singing voice in DuckTales when Huey points out that his singing is so bad it's beating the monster they're fighting. Which makes it a little weird when, in this episode, Donald seems to be the featured frontman of the band, the main singer. Though it doesn't seem that way at first. In the beginning of this episode, Panchito starts singing the band's new song, Hear My Voice, and then he and Jose kind of get into a fight about what direction they want the song to go. But before that happens, Donald is very clearly standing in front of the microphone and is supposed to be the one singing this song. So, if Panchito is the lead singer of the band normally, what's going on here? Well, there's really no canonical explanation for this, as it's mostly just a setup to feature Donald's terrible singing voice for story reasons. But I kind of like to think of the Three Caballeros as the Beatles. You might have your main singers, like John and Paul, or in this case, Jose and Panchito, but when Ringo writes his own song, he gets to sing too. That's Donald. It's just too bad that nobody can understand Donald's singing voice.
Well, that's weird. I understand you perfectly.
Well, almost nobody. This moment seems kind of small, but it actually carries a lot of emotional weight. This DuckTales version of how Donald and Daisy Duck first meet is really kind of familiar. A lot of their time on screen together hints at the kind of antagonism that normally defines their relationship as characters. And we're used to seeing that. One of the Paul Rudish cartoons is completely based around the idea of that antagonism. Mickey and Minnie as this idealized happy relationship, and Donald and Daisy fighting a lot more. But fighting is just how they get along. But the important factor here is that they still do get along. And as DuckTales shows, it's because, in spite of their rougher edges, they understand each other. And here, we see Daisy understanding Donald quite literally, as Donald pours his heart out in a song where he's desperately trying to get people to know that even though his heart is strange and hard to understand, he'll still give everything he has to stand by those he cares about. And in a world where Donald is often just misunderstood as short-tempered and unintelligible, someone really getting what he's about in his heart makes all the difference. And for some reason, despite his nightmare of a voice, Daisy really does understand that. Because in a lot of ways, she's really similar. Hot-headed and short-tempered, but secretly a caring and passionate person. This song, its setup, and how it's delivered here is an unexpected but pretty satisfying way to explain how their relationship works. And I actually think that's pretty refreshing, because a lot of the time their relationship plays on common tropes of unhappy couples. Jokes that hinge on the idea that the person you love is supposed to be a burden to you rather than a partner. This takes that aspect, that butt of the joke that Donald and Daisy are usually subjected to, and twists it, showing instead that while they have their troubles and fights, they keep working at it because they understand each other and care about each other deep down. This episode is a rare moment where Donald and Daisy's relationship steps away from that typical ball and chain humor and explores something deeper and more interesting. And I think that's kind of important because, as funny as a lot of the Donald and Daisy fights are and have been over the years, it's important to show that that's not actually what you would want to base a relationship on. A relationship is built on caring and trust and understanding. This story brings that out in Donald and Daisy's relationship, and I really like that. Okay, yeah, maybe that's a lot to take away from this, but I think it's definitely interesting, and I really like how it focuses both on Donald's terrible voice as a singer in a band, and builds on that as to what Daisy sees in him. It's not his voice, but it's what she hears beyond his voice. And that's kind of what I think this episode is really about. Good relationships are based on listening to each other. And not just romantic relationships, like Daisy hearing Donald beyond his voice either, but all relationships are based on good communication. And the rest of the friendships in this show don't really start coming together until everyone listens to one another. For instance, in this episode, the three Caballeros don't really come together as a band until the three friends start listening to each other, integrating Panchito's showmanship and Jose's need to have a danceable beat with Donald's need to sing this song that's important to him.
Drop the beat!
In the same way, Louie has to learn to listen to and value the opinion of his brother Dewey, and realizing that their relationship as brothers is stronger once they start working together, and that, well, Louie can build a better heist if he trusts his brother.
You know, I'm actually working on a new con. I'd really like to hear your advice on it.
The Dewey Dozen? Our brotherhood is the greatest scheme of all!
There's a lot of other great stuff in this episode too. Gyro Gearloose makes a short appearance that's jovial and delightful. Falcon Graves' connection to Mark Beeks from previous episodes plays a major part in this story, and it has some of the most fun moments in the entire episode. And as always, Dewey is amazing in his own unique way.
Oh my gosh, he's the worst! But fascinating somehow?
I want to look away, but I can't.
Above all that, though, this story is a great example of how much the writers of the DuckTales team care about seemingly innocuous questions in Disney lore. Not just the simple question of how did Daisy and Donald meet, but the more complicated question of how they even work together as a couple. You could probably write a whole series exploring that idea, but I think this episode kind of says enough. A good relationship is about communication and understanding each other. And despite all the odds, these two ducks are birds of a feather. I can't believe I just said that. I guess sometimes stupid wordplay is more powerful than good taste. But you know what's always in good taste? Doing simple things that make the YouTube algorithm happy. Like liking and subscribing and clicking the notification bell icon and leaving a comment. Seriously, I hear those things are really good for YouTube channels. I hate asking for it though, it's weird, isn't it? Either way, it's been a blast getting back to making these videos after so many months away. Thanks for sticking with me. Thanks for watching and geeking out over dumb cartoons. And as always, take it easy, Internet.